something, you should question it. I also agree you shouldn't have false certainty. I would say, however, sometimes certainty, like you rightly pointed out, can close the doors of other things, epistemic doors, which is like other times, certainty can open doors. For example, I'll tell you something interesting. Adnan spoke about the peacock's tail, right? You could say that that is designed and be certain about that. And being certain in a designer opens up epistemic doors to the universe that we may not have contemplated. For example, it allows us to understand that there is a function behind nature. There is a purpose. It's not blind randomness. So sometimes certainty, when you should be certain, we're not certain because we're worried about certainty, but that can close certain epistemic doors. Because I believe God is a means by which we can attain a lot more knowledge. So I don't believe nature refers to a designer alone. I believe that God himself is a means by which nature is interpreted. I'll give you an example. Some people think design is something purely that they've inferred from nature.
Yeah.
But I believe you have a predisposition to design, and that's why you see design.
Could I
see my point?
I do, because in my worldview, I say I don't believe in a heavenly realm. I don't believe in God. I believe in the material, rational universe. But I don't think that makes me spiritually bankrupt. I think I can have I think art and beauty redeem us. They strengthen our souls, improve our minds. And I think through beauty and love, we can have deeply spiritual existence without religion. What would you think about
To your point, I would say you are partially correct, but not sufficiently correct. You're partially correct that beyond materialism, looking at poetry or looking at science and looking at the world is something which gives you a type of spiritual feeling. But I would say you're not sufficiently correct, because if you fundamentally miss out here in Speaker's Corner, if you couldn't see the color green, you would be missing out on a paradigm around us. That's part of reality. God as the anchor of reality, God as the fountain of reality, when that's not part of your cognitive architecture, you are impoverished, right? Do you understand that for us as Muslims, we make God is the ultimate reality, and everything else is a type of fake reality. The only true reality is the reality of God. Everything else is the creation of God.
Why? So you think in terms of my knowledge, I'm impoverished, but in terms of my spiritual life, I can still have as rich a spiritual life as, say, a Muslim. As even if I am you don't believe that either.
That's what we disagree. I'll tell you why.
And may I say that I think yes, yes, please tell me why.
I'll tell you why I would disagree with you. The reason why I would disagree with you is because spirituality without God is like watching a movie in black and white. You're missing the color of life.
I assure you, as someone who does not believe in God, that I do not see reality in black and white. I saw the rich colours of existence, and in fact, I think that you could claim there are plenty of apostates who leave religion, and they are not, spiritually impoverished. And I know this is a bit anecdotal, a bit wishy-washy, but I don't think that your spiritual world is ruined.
You will give your testimony, apostates will, I will, right? The real question is there a God? If there is a God and you reject God, you are going to have impoverished spirituality. Would you agree with that?
I don't think so. I think you can be you can be uncertain and have a deeply spiritual life.
I said something before. I said if there is a God,
yes,
and you reject God, you're missing out on the fountain of reality. You're just dealing with the branches.
Yes, indeed. If there was truly a God and you denied that deity, then you would be intellectually impoverished.
Spiritually too.
Potentially not. Maybe God is so kind that he even gives the people that do not believe in him the opportunity to enjoy his creation.
Let me give you 2 verses from the Quran. The first verse is, in the remembrance of God, your hearts find peace. That's the first verse. The second verse is, whoever turns away from God's remembrance, they'll have a depressed life. So there's positive and negative. If you remember God, you'll have inner peace. If you reject God, you stay away from God, you'll have a depressed life. So Islam says the opposite. Islam says if you don't have a link with God, you'll have an impoverished spiritual life.
See, I do believe in a God of a sort, but it's just radically different to, I believe, what you would say
Like
is
a
a God.
Spinozan deistic God.
Perhaps, yes, a God that exists in, I think beauty can be deified, I think love can be deified, I think I think there are tangible things that we can see and feel that almost transcend the normal nitty-gritty run of reality, that things that make life really shine with glory and brilliance.
So, I'm sure you've heard of Robert Greene.
I think is he the
48 Laws of Power
mathematician?
48
No.
Laws of Power and books on human nature. He calls this feeling the sublime.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And there's other people who say something similar. And all of them are kind of pointing to something non-material. I believe that's a conduit to true spirituality with God. It's like a halfway station.
Yeah.
2 years ago when we spoke, you didn't have this belief, so you've evolved. 2 years ago, you were a lot more atheistic and rational.
Perhaps.
Why did you change?
Well, I suppose that there are we live in the material world and the world of the mind, the mental, the spiritual world, whatever you want. And I think this is what the human nature fundamentally is, having a foot in both worlds, both realms, the earthly and the mental. And I think that. I'm so sorry. You asked me why my beliefs changed.
I'll remind you what I remember of your beliefs.
Yes, may I just finish because I suppose that the beauty of I think that the mind, the world around us, it's pregnant with meaning and beauty and divinity. Yes, but I don't think you actually need to posit a God. You don't need God as a foundation to have that world.
Okay, so
I think you can extract God.
Sometimes, when you're dealing with God, sometimes you want to move forward. No, it's okay. Sometimes when you're cracking a problem and you're trying to open through the front door, it's not opening. You have to go through the window. So let's have another crack at this. Your fundamental point is that you can have spirituality without God.
You can have a richly spiritual life.
And I'm saying you can't. So we're at loggerheads. However, what if I give you another route, side window?
Yes.
What if I say to you, a third person that watches our conversation, he is, say, someone quite robotic. They are looking at your view and my view as two subjective views. And that person says, the real question is, does God exist or does God not exist? That will be the adjudicator to whether my perspective or your perspective is true.
I suppose on a epistemological level, in terms of knowledge, you're absolutely right. God exists and you are intellectually rich and I am void of knowledge. But on a purely spiritual level, I don't actually think it matters if God exists or he doesn't. Because I think as a religious person, you can have a deeply spiritual life, or as an atheist, and you could say that God has given the ability for us all to enjoy his world, regardless of whether you turn from him or not. That would make him a truly great and forgiving deity, do you think?
Would you say that my view and your view is incompatible?
I think in terms of Islam or religion, yeah, I come from a position of uncertainty, and I would only enter Islam to admire it from the inside, as you might admire a piece of music or an art gallery. I think they're beautiful ideas contained within the system, but I don't think I would ever really stay there forever in a state of certainty unless I had really profound proof. Yes.
So, what if I was to posit to you, my view and your view are diametrically opposed on spirituality?
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I gave you the example of remembering God, like the Quran says, if you don't remember God, you'll have a depressed life. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, the difference between the living and the dead is the difference between the one who remembers God and does not remember God. So from the Islamic perspective, if somebody says they have spirituality, the Islamic perspective is they are a living body. Sorry, they're a dead body. They're not an alive body. A truly alive person is someone that remembers God. So our views are incompatible. So the question is, how do we judge between the two views now? And from your perspective, you will say spirituality can be achieved through XYZ means without a belief in a transcendent God. I'm saying it can't. So the question is, how do we adjudicate? And I think the adjudication is done through the question, is there a God?
Yeah.
And if we can answer that question, then we will see who's right.
Yes, we could also, you could become agnostic and I could become Muslim for like a week. We genuinely occupy these different positions and we see if our spiritual lives change. That could be
I will tell you.
Interesting.
I don't think you can fake belief. That's my
Okay,
belief.
yeah.
You can't pretend like there's a God, and I can't pretend there is no God.
Yeah.
For me, God is everything. God is everywhere by His knowledge, and God is the ultimate reality, right? So for me to try and live a week imagining there's no God, it's like it's impossibility.
Well, see, this is my whole issue with religion. You are limiting your mind, I'm afraid to say, to you are not exploring other possibilities. I think you are deeply. I think your heart is. Should we I think you can have a very deeply spiritual life as a religious person, and I can have a deeply spiritual life as a non-religious person. But you are ultimately saying I can't. But I'm not going to stand here and give you some anecdotal evidence about how I'm enjoying things. But I believe we both can.
Yeah,
yes.
I want to take you back to something else that you said.
Oh, yes, of course, yes.
Which is interesting. You said having a religious view restricts you.
From evil Islam and wicked Hamas. Free Palestine.
I think so, yes.
From
I agree
evil
with
Islam and wicked Hamas.
And I also believe
Free UK
any
from
world
evil
view
Islam
that you hold
and
on
wicked
to,
Hamas.
you will automatically limit yourself from other
And
worldviews.
I agree with that as well.
Wicked
Yes.
Hamas.
If someone was to
UK
say to me,
from evil Islam
by
and
being
wicked Hamas.
by being a
Free
Kantian
UK
or
from evil
virtue
Islam
ethicist or
and wicked
consequentialist,
Hamas.
you limit
Free
yourself. And I would
the
say,
UK
I would
yeah, of
agree
course.
with
from
that,
evil
yes.
Islam
So I would say
and
mine
wicked
and your
Hamas.
position
Free
are
the
identical
UK
from that perspective.
Yes.
You also will
Islam
have to limit
and
yourself
wicked
when you hold the
Hamas.
perspective.
I think for me it's about scale though. It's about scale. So whereas you are in one system of belief, for me it's about scale. So whereas you inhabit one system of belief, as someone who is uncertain, I have the possibility to wander into many systems, like a pilgrim exploring different worldviews.
Okay, what if I was to take your example and apply it to say something a bit more concrete, like science? So in science, say we have the phenomena at a subatomic level.
Yeah.
So we have a group of physicists who say we believe in the Copernican school of interpretation. Some say we believe in informational, relational, many worlds, shut up and calculate. There's different schools. What if there was a sixth school which said, I refuse to go down the Copernican or the many worlds. I want to be a quantum pilgrim and float around.
Yeah.
Now, the physicists would say that's fine, but it doesn't mean in of itself, just because you are not subscribing to one school rather than the other, and you just make yourself free enough to float, your position is more coherent than ours. Because sometimes it's better to hold on to a position than it is to always say all possibilities are there, because that position itself could be incoherent.
Yes.
Do you understand the example?
I do. I would say to that that science is fundamentally concerned with the nature of physical reality, of physics, physical things, whereas ultimately, when we have these conversations about religion and philosophy, we're actually wandering in the realm of ideas predominantly. We're not pointing at this to prove our points. We're pointing at one of our other's ideas. We are building a bridge between our two minds and examining thoughts. And in that world of ideas, I think the most intellectually healthy position is to say you're not absolutely certain, and you can definitely inhabit different systems, but I think it's a mistake to say you're absolutely dead set on one. And I would just say, I think certainty, people say they're certain because they're scared of the unknown. And I'm here to say that I'm here to say that although the unknown seems terrifying, it is actually liberating. It frees you, it allows you to wander and explore different realms of thought. And it doesn't bankrupt your spirituality.
I understand why you're saying that, but there's one point that you made which I want you to explain a bit more further, because it's not adding up to me. You're saying that by not subscribing to a position, it's the most intellectually healthy thing to do. Can you explain why you think that's the case? Because I think the opposite.
I think you should definitely. I think you should subscribe to positions.
But then automatically,
yes,
it's what you said. You have to shut yourself off to other things.
Yes, I think yes, you ought to subscribe to positions, but I think you should always have that back door. That back door that you in other words, you can walk out of your mind or your beliefs, and you can go on a journey, explore other systems. And that's where uncertainty comes in. So, although I firmly have, of course I have lots of beliefs. I'm not certain. Yeah, I'm almost.
And they restrict other beliefs.
But I don't. What I wouldn't say that I don't. I still have the opportunity to reject them and go and find other things if I would wish.
Let's break it down to.
Yes.
I'll give you the crux of my argument, and then we'll break it down part by part. I would say the opposite. I would say by not believing in God with certainty, we are closing the epistemic door to all of reality. So, for example, now from my epistemic perspective, design can be explained with the designer. Morality can be explained by a lawgiver. Functionality of the social systems that we have can be explained through God's wisdom. The explanation of the physical aspects of the universe, the fine-tuning of the universe, the origin of consciousness, the origin of life. Even us as human beings experiencing and living this world, having this type of existential air which is filled with meaning. All of these things you can only arrive at if you arrive at through certainty. But what I wanted to do to show you the power of certainty is to give you a moral question. But I think morality is one of the easiest things we can always go back to. Putin's invasion of Russia, of Ukraine, he believes it to be Russia anyway. He believes that's ancient Russia. Now, if someone was to hold a moral relativistic position and say, I understand Zelensky's perspective, I understand the perspective of the civilians of Ukraine, I understand Putin's perspective, I'm not really going to say anyone's right or wrong, even though one country is invading another. I'm going to kind of take it along the lines of hundreds of years ago, Ukraine, Kiev, it was ancient Russia, maybe they have a land to the claim, and they refuse to take a moral position on this. Would you say that's an empowering position, or would you say that's an incoherent position?
I think I think ultimately it is an incoherent position to take, and I think that's a tragedy with the world in which we live. sometimes you have to dispense with the intellectual luxury of being uncertain, and you have to pick up a Kalashnikov and defend your farm from an oncoming tank, you know. And that, so yes. So
do you see that, how that relates to my belief in spirituality?
That, yes, and I think that, yes, it is interesting. So sometimes you have to, like, exactly suspend. You have to force yourself to embrace certainty, draw a saber, you know, forehead sweating, leap on a horse and gallop to death or glory. And that's life, isn't it?
Some people may say, oh, but you're being certain. But in that particular position, that certainty is better for you than to be uncertain, because you've seen all the moral characters. For example, if I was to ask you, and you're a very reasonable person, what are your thoughts on the conflict between Congo and Rwanda? You would say, I withhold a particular belief on it until I investigate. But once you investigate, you will say X, Y, Z, right? Likewise, when it comes to spirituality, I understand your perspective of saying, well, maybe they're right, maybe the Hindus are right, maybe the Jews are right, maybe the Muslims are right, the Sikhs are right, Buddhists are right, Shintos are right, maybe no one's right. But then I don't agree with your position that that categorical pilgrim stage is the best stage to be. I think you should be certain about something.
Yes. No, I think you have to have conviction, you have to have certainty. But I don't accept that I'm spiritually bankrupt. I can be certain about that, and I don't have a God. So I when I go into a church and I've been into the Great Mosque in Egypt.
Oh wow!
Yes, stunning. And
have you ever bowed down to God?
You mean like towards Mecca?
Just God.
Oh,
just
God. Yeah. I've prayed.
How does it feel?
It feels very good. Yes, it does feel good.
What if that feeling was a doorway to ecstasy? Because I'll tell you something interesting. A lot of people don't realize most of our decisions when it comes to religion, or it comes to atheism, agnosticism, even moral positions, a lot of them they come from the gut. There's an intuition, there's some sort of predisposition. I sometimes tell people, just try to pray to God and see what happens. And I'm not telling them to pray to Allah, I'm not telling them to pray to a particular name, I'm just saying the one God.
Yes.
Because Allah is just the Arabic for God, right? And in other languages you have the word for God. Because sometimes people think I'm telling them to become Muslim. It's just like, just try and do that, because I truly believe if you do that, it will transform your life.
You know what
and you'll be guided to Islam. That's my view.
I think that's interesting. For me, when I pray, I get a similar feeling when I look at a great work of art or I listen to amazing music. I feel that power, that embracing of my soul, and it's a really strong feeling.
Okay, so just on that point,
yes.
before you lose that thought, would you agree with me on the minimum that experience disproves materialism?
We don't live in an entirely material world. We live in. We have a mental world up here that isn't physical. So yeah, I think anyone who says we live in a purely material world is.
But you know, scientifically, no scientist would agree with that. Because they always look at the world from a materialistic perspective.
Well, they try and understand how for example, we have loads of ideas, and they might try and explain how those ideas come about through neurological pathways, but the actual experience, the raw qualia of these ideas is non-physical.
Good.
Yes.
Good. Would you also agree that monism, which is the current view, the mind is the brain at work?
Yeah.
Like you said. So whatever is going on in your brain, we can break it down to these neurological firings or these chemical pathways, whatever. Would you agree that this has been detrimental to the world of spirituality?
Certainly. I think we've mutilated mysticism.
I like that.
Yeah. I think in the West, I think God was killed in the Enlightenment. he was mutilated in the walls. The divine corpse was. I think what came out of the Second First World War were all of these secular moral systems, fascism, communism, the hippies, very very well-meaning bunch. But then you have wokeism. Wokeism is just a part of this broader cycle of trying to replace the morals of God with the morals of man, create a secular order, and I don't think they're very spiritually rich. I don't think any of the, I don't think communism, fascism, I don't think any of these systems are deep in the way that some religions are, that some works of art are. So in that sense, I'm far more inclined to embrace religion than I am the secular kind of.
I would say 2 years ago when we spoke, and now where you are, I see in 2 years ago, 2 years from now, I think you're going to be on a different trajectory. Because you have an open mind. And look, at the end of the day, my perspective and your perspective, ultimately, we can't change each other's minds. What will change our minds is our own personal experiences. And the way I look at it, the spiritual experience a person has can transform you in a way that no logical argument can. I'll give you an example. I'm sure you've been to many protests, right?
I try and avoid them.
We've seen them on TV or whatever.
Yes.
Imagine a person stands up on a podium and they say 1 + 1 is 2, and the crowd goes wild. That doesn't happen. The speaker will always go for something subjective and visceral and personal and subjective. He'll speak about God or morality or justice or art or something that is not material. What moves humans is poetry, is art, and ultimately is spirituality, is God. All of these logical arguments that we make, these are made ad hoc afterwards. People just try and justify the beliefs that they have.
Yes.
Right? Now that doesn't go to say you can't come up with rational arguments for God. I think you can. But I think a lot of the time, people forget that for most of us, we put the cart before the horse.
This is a very important distinction, yes. You're right. Because, there's the raw experience of God or the divine or whatever, and then there's the arguments, natural theology, and it was a very very interesting conversation.
I think I have your number as well.
Yes.
There's another friend of yours.
Alexi. Yes.
Yes. How's he doing?
He's very well. He's in Dubai at the moment.
Oh, he must be loving it.
Yeah, he's actually he's going to Georgia though. They've got these amazing monasteries in the mountains. Yeah.
You should bring him back here. We should have a chat.
We should get him back into this. The Temple of Wisdom.
We should. It was really fantastic.
Yes. Pleasure. Yes. What? I'm sorry. What's your name? Suboor. Strabo. Yeah.
You can take my number.
Yeah. Let's. We should definitely carry this on.
You probably have it.
Maybe.
How do I go to?
I like it. We're somehow far more competent when it comes to metaphysics, and we are putting a phone number in. That's great. Okay, thanks.
I think I have your number. I do remember speaking to you.
Great.
There you go. See, look.
There I am.
Newman. Strabo Newman.
Perfect.
See, I have you saved.
Well, I'm sorry I didn't reciprocate that.
No worries. Let's keep in touch. And
is this yours?
Alexi back. Oh yes.
Yeah, that's it. Is that yes?
It's my wife.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah.
Hope you have
I
a
feel
great day.
like a general with all of these things. Though.
Yes.
Shall I?
Finish,
Yeah. Can I?